So good morning and welcome. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Sunday service for the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. And if there's anybody watching this that's never been to a Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. So to begin our service this morning, my wife Becky, who's a practitioner emeritus, is going, my mouth's not working today, practitioner emeritus is going to open us with a prayer, and then I'm going to do a reading, and then we'll get into the message.
So I just invite all of us to turn within to that space of the Most High, releasing all that has come before us to get us here in this place. Just releasing all this activity, being here right now, right here. And so from this place of heartfelt gratitude and love, I am knowing that there is just one infinite love, this universal love, this power, this all-knowingness that is always surrounding each and every one of us, right here, right now. I'm knowing my oneness in infinite power and in this infinite place, that it is who and what I am, always here, always unfolding the love that I am. And I'm knowing this for each person who is on this morning's meeting and who will be seeing this later on, that each one of us is one in divine power and with one another. And so knowing this from this place of open-heartedness and love, I am knowing that right here and now, that love is expressing itself so clearly, so freely through each of us. Through this morning's service, the celebration of life, I'm knowing that it is expressing so freely through Reverend Dr. Ron's message, this lesson that we allow to deepen our awareness of who and what we really are. Each one of us is a spiritual being having this human experience, and we are reminded of this, that no matter what is appearing in our life, it is just that, an appearance. It is not who we truly are, spiritual beings. And so knowing this, I'm knowing that we are all part of this wonderful, infinite, universal love, allowing it to come forth and express throughout every area of our life. And so I'm so thankful of knowing this for each one of us. I release it, let it be, just knowing that it is done. And so it is.
So it is. So the reading this morning that I'm going to do is by this terrific book called Experiencing the Beacon Within. And I'll let you know, guess who the author is. So the title of the reading is called Feeling Abundant. And I wrote this a while back, but a few weeks ago, several of us were discussing what it takes for us to feel abundant. As I thought about our conversation, it brought to mind an incident from my graduate school days. I was studying for my MBA when a fellow student asked me to have coffee with him. He wanted to talk about an interesting cab ride he had just taken. It seems he and another gentleman had both hailed a taxi and reached it at the same time, so they agreed to share the ride. The other gentleman was a senior executive at a large Midtown corporation. During the entire ride from Midtown Manhattan to Lower Manhattan, he was complaining to my friend that he made $50,000 a year, but had so many bills, he was always broke. He said he never felt so poor in his life. And what you need to know is, in those days, $50,000 was a great salary. After he told me the story, my friend asked, how can you earn that much money and feel poor? I don't remember what I said then, but I do know now how it is possible. Abundance is a state of mind. It's not about our bank account. I just lost my place. It's not about our bank account. Dr. Holmes reminds us that if one wishes to demonstrate prosperity, he must first have a consciousness of prosperity. You can have a bulging bank account, but if you feel poor, you are poor. Dr. Holmes also wrote, if we think poverty and lack, we are certainly creating them and causing them to be demonstrated in our experience. So if you haven't guessed, I want to speak about abundance today. And the title of the message is Opening to Our Abundance. And I finished the reading with a quote from Ernest Holmes, and I want to start the lesson with one. He wrote, the highest attitude of mind from which all else springs is one of perfect calm and absolute trust in spirit. So in my life, I think the best book that I have ever read on abundance is Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth, the late Unity minister. And he tells a story. And I don't know if this is apocryphal or a true story, but it's about a businessman who constantly strives to be a success, to get ahead. He had a great home. He had a fabulous sports car. Butterworth said he had all the luxuries that anybody could get from earning a lot of money. And yet, he was always feeling pressure, always more, always driving harder and harder and harder. In fact, he wound up getting an ulcer and having a heart condition, but he still kept plugging away. And then one day when he was at work, he got a phone call that his house was on fire. And when he got there, it was a total loss. And the next day, he was going through the ashes, and he had one of those aha moments. And he thought to himself, I still have the things in life that I value the most. I still have my wife. I still have my children. I still have my future. And he said to himself, I can go forth from here living in consciousness, living calm, living poised, and then I'll be totally free. So Butterworth goes on and he talks about, and I'm sure most of us know this, that this is kind of a review, but he talks about how life is lived from the inside out. It's not just what happens to us, but it's what we think about and what we do about what happens to us. We need to move away from the idea that our welfare is tied to the economic fluctuations that are going on out there. The flow of substance and all our good comes from within. And Butterworth says, and I think this is so true, no one can keep your good from you except you. No one can keep your good from you except you. And think about this now. Even in the worst of economic times, the worst, there are still people who prosper. There are still people who do well. And Butterworth, I want to read you a quote from the book. He said, prosperity is a way of living and thinking, and not just money or things. Poverty is a way of living and thinking, and not just a lack of money and things. And I think that one of the great examples of that I've ever read about was the late Mike Todd, who said, I've been broke many times, but I've never been poor. So he didn't have a lot of money, but up here, he never felt poor. Yehuda Berg is a rabbi, and he is a scholar on the Talmud, and he wrote a book called True Prosperity. And in the book, he poses a couple of questions, 3 questions actually, that I want to share with you. He said, so why do so many sincere people invest in books and courses on money and real estate, and yet at the end of the day, so few achieve what they're looking for? And he said, second question, why do the people who make the most money on books, on money and real estate, why are they the ones that are selling the book? And lastly, he said, why, or asked, why do people who seem to achieve success pay such a high price for it in terms of family, relationships, and their health? And he said the answer to these questions is that deep down, most of us really don't want success. What we want is fulfillment. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel, he put it, brimming with joy, with satisfaction, and with prosperity. And he said that the kind of success that passes for prosperity here in our society is having one thing, but having to give up something else. In other words, it has side effects. He said, for instance, you make a lot of money, but you have to give up time with your family or doing the things that you love to do. And let me give you 2 examples from my business career. When I worked for SmithKline Corporation, they were having a senior management meeting, and they sent out a booklet with the picture of all of the managers that were going to be there and a little bio. And my boss at the time and I were looking over this booklet, and he came to the picture of somebody who I knew quite well because he was the senior marketing person at a subsidiary of SmithKline I had worked for. And he looked at me after he read the guy's bio, which was really impressive, and he said, I'd never hire this guy. And I said, why wouldn't you hire him? And he said, he has too many outside interests. I don't want somebody that's got a lot of interest. I want him to only think of the job. And the other example I'll give, I think I might have spoken about this before, but I also worked for General Foods Corporation. And one of the fellows that was a peer of mine knew the senior vice president of human resources on a personal level outside of work. And he came in and he was telling me one day he had lunch with this fellow over the weekend. And he asked the senior VP, he said, so tell me, how do you balance your personal life with your business life? And the response he got back was, if you even have to ask the question, you'll never make it. Think about that. If you even have to ask the question, how am I going to spend time with my family and balance that with work? Or how am I going to spend time at work and balancing it with my family? He said, if you even ask that question, you're never going to make it. you're never going to make it. I saw a quote this week from a former member who has since moved back to Indiana, Craig, and he had this quote on his Facebook page. It said, I don't know who wrote it, but it said, don't educate your children to be rich. Educate them to be happy. So when they grow up, they know the value of things, not the price. You know, money and power don't produce happiness. Happiness comes from living and serving our neighbors, from doing good deeds, from compassion. A lady named Lynn Twist, who's an international writer and speaker, she writes about the principle of sufficiency. And she said, that's when you give up trying to get more of what you really don't need. It frees up, she said, when you do that, it frees up immense energy to make a difference with what you have. She said, we can be known when we do that. We can be known for what we allocate rather than what we accumulate. She said, we can be measured and we can measure others by our inner riches rather than our accumulation of outer riches. And Robert Savage once wrote, the richest person is the one who can be content with what he has. So Edwene Gaines, I've spoken about her before. She's a Unity minister. And just in case some of you don't know who she is, Edwene, I don't think she goes around speaking anymore now, but she used to go around in her career speaking at churches. And she's spoken, I think, at every church I've ever been at. And because we invited her. And when you invited Edwene, what she spoke about is prosperity. And she would tell you, I will book my flight and I fly first class. I want you to book me in a hotel and make sure it's a 5-star hotel. Give me a list of really good restaurants to eat in. And I'll be renting a car. And she paid for all of that. Now she was traveling. She used to live in Alabama, and we had her in California and in Arizona and actually here. And she would pay for all of that. And she'd come on a Sunday and she would deliver the message. She'd take an honorarium for the message, and then she would do a workshop and she would sell her products, and she would take the money from that. And then she would tithe back 10% of all of that back to the church. So I'm telling you that because Edwene was somebody who lived what she said. She believed in spirituality and prosperity, and she lived it. And she wrote a book, and in the book, she talks about the four spiritual laws that govern prosperity. And the first three, she says, are tithing, setting goals, and forgiveness. But I want to talk about the fourth one. And the fourth one, she said, is discovering and following your divine purpose. Discovering and following your divine purpose. And she said, when you're aligned with your divine purpose, that you bring passion to everything that you do. She said, God is not glorified by poverty. God is not glorified by illness. God is not glorified when you feel guilty or unworthy. And God is not glorified when you play victim. She said, God is glorified when you stand up and claim your birthright. And she said, who are you? You are a divine person who deserves every good thing life has to offer. Every one of us is a divine being that deserves every good thing that life has to offer. Michael Hyatt wrote an article where he discusses what he says is two types of thinking. He said there are people and there are two different types of thinking. One of them leads to success and joy, and the other leads to failure, fear, and discontent. And he says the first group are abundance thinkers. These people believe there's always more where that came from. And they ask themselves, how can I give more than is expected? They're optimistic about the future, and they're thankful and confident. And he said, the second kind are scarcity thinkers. They believe there'll never be enough. They're pessimistic about the future. They think small, and they're entitled, and they're fearful. So think for a minute, how do these two ways of thinking impact your life? And I thought of an example of this about a company who sends, a shoe company that sends two of their salesmen to Africa to see what kind of market there is in Africa. And the first salesman sends a telegram back, says there's no market here. The people here don't wear shoes. The second salesman sends a telegram back saying, the market here is unlimited. The people here don't wear shoes. One of them was an abundance thinker. One of them was a scarcity thinker. So I want to talk one last thing about an article I read that was written by the Abundance Project. And the title of it was 5 Places to Find Abundance. And I want to speak to 3 of them. The first place they say you can find abundance is in your relationship with your family and with your friends. And they say that this is the grounding point in all of our lives, family and friends. The second place is self. They titled it Self, and they mean focusing on our own personal development, letting go of negativity, focusing on the good things that are coming to us, and finding new ways to expand our divine gifts. And the third place, the third thing they say is giving. Giving. Serve someone. Do something kind for somebody else. Say, how can I help? I want to give. And they say it can change your life, that you feel great joy in your heart by bringing light to somebody else's heart. And I just want to add one more of my own, and that is gratitude. Stop for a moment and feel gratitude for all the good in our life. You know, yesterday, when I was preparing the message, I went out and I sat in our, we have a screened-in porch, and I sat in the porch to do it because it was a beautiful day. And I kept getting distracted because we lived probably 50 feet from the Indian River, and the sun was beating down on the river, and it looked like gems coming off it. And I just kept thinking to myself, God, are we lucky to live in such a place like this? Are we fortunate? And then I started to think in terms of all the people that bring good things into our life. And think about that, the people that produce the goods and services that we use, the people that grow the food that we eat, the people that bring it to us, the people that keep us safe, the people that keep us in good health. Just, you can add your own to that list, but we all have so much to be grateful for and have so much abundance in our life. And I just want to close with these words from Lao Tzu, who wrote, be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. God bless you. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful week.